Hi, um, I'm back. Okay, gonna work on part two. Um, I there's just so much to this story, but I don't know how many parts it's gonna have. But this will be part two. If you haven't seen part one, you can go back to that. That basically went to 2017 when I was date raped right before I started uh, doing Airbnb, which I started doing Airbnb in the smaller house, which was also our house, which we had previously rented out, that I moved into in 2016. I started doing Airbnb in the home, so I rented out rooms in my home while I was living in my home. On Airbnb, I started that in 2017 and I did that till 2019. But there was a part I missed that is important to note. Yeah, there's two things I wanted to say that I left out that are interesting and part of the story. In 2015, in 2015 is when I filed for divorce. I and I wasn't careful enough, and I didn't read reviews when I picked a lawyer. I just picked a woman lawyer, and it ended up being a very bad choice for me, and she was very shady. And so that happened in 2015, and I believe it was, first off, I didn't meet her. Her husband was her secretary, and I only met him. And they put they put in the file for divorce without alimony, which was ridiculous, seeing that I was married for 30 years and he didn't want me to work outside the home. At the end, though, he didn't really have a lot of to complain about. Not that I'm tooting my own horn, but I didn't cheat on him or anything. You know, we had maybe what I think was finally put in the papers was I think what was put in the papers was irreconcilable differences, because neither of us was having an affair or anything like that. So they didn't put, unbeknownst to me, yeah, I did look over the paper, but I wasn't familiar with legal jargon, and I just assumed, but it wasn't in the paperwork. And then when I finally met her, she was so condescending. And there's a funny in here too. It really ended up being ironic because, and this is, I will say her name. I'm not afraid of you. Her name is Daniel Dayor Hines in Warner Robins, Georgia. Do not hire this lawyer. Horrible, shady, dishonest. She has lots of bad reviews. And what was so hilarious, though, is I was still unaware that they didn't put it in the paperwork. I didn't meet her for, they just, nothing was going anywhere. And I was just like, what's going on with this? They were just sort of sitting on it. And I was looking for a job, and I was unable to find a job. I was donating blood plasma. I was looking for a job. when your when your morale is low, when you feel badly about yourself, and when your kids are kind of not happy with you, and you're having trouble getting along with them, and like everything, like it's just like it's just making matters worse and worse. And like I didn't think, I said to my son Ian, we went I was at I went driving around. Since I'm new in the area, I just go driving around. And I decided to look for a Presbyterian church. I was like, well, what did I end up calling that? And like, I make the video and I decide the title later. That's kind of like, my poetry books too. I write them and then I decide, well, what's a good title for this piece of work? And so I ended up starting with, I was Presbyterian. So I was looking for Presbyterian church and I found one called Faith Presbyterian Church. And then I drove further and I saw a Red Lobster and I'm like, I'm hungry. And then it ended up, I sat down and I ordered, and it ended up, my son texted me and said, I'm coming home now. And I said, I'm at Red Lobster. Do you want to come eat with me? And anyways, what I was getting at is I said to him, I didn't know how hard the divorce was going to be. I'm glad I didn't know, but I didn't know all the things that were going to happen after as a result of my divorce. Like, um, some of, I've had difficult relationships with my children. That has been complicated. That was difficult. It was much harder finding a job than I thought it was going to be. I was like, I can do anything, I've been, I thought I could get a job as a waitress, like I've been serving food like my whole adult life. I can serve food. They wanted experience. I went in on my last experience. I had experience in retail, but since it was 30 years before, I didn't put it on there. Like I almost got a job. I thought I was going to get a job at Hobby Lobby. I thought I was going to get a job at Chick-fil-A. That was another funny too, because me and my teenage daughter went for the same open interviews, and we didn't know, neither of us knew the other one had went, and they hired her and they didn't hire me. I was like, Chick-fil-A, what the heck? She has tattoos. We don't want to hire her. But, hey, it's Jesus. Come on, Chick-fil-A. They hired my teenage daughter and they didn't hire me. So anyways, when I finally met my lawyer, she was so condescending. They were just like, they knew they didn't put alimony in there. They just thought, oh, they just looked at me like her husband. One thing her husband said to me is, you're so young. And I was just like, I was 50. I'm like, I'm not as young as I look. Thank you. And it was funny, in the middle of this, he passed away, which I didn't know. He passed away, and I got into this thing with her online because I fired her basically, and so I didn't get that money back. It was like $2,500. And yeah, I fired her. I fired her, though, not because I found out about the alimony. I found out about that afterwards. I fired her because she was so condescending to me and said, well, have you got a job yet? Oh, well, have you been going back and checking with them? And like, when I went to law school, and she was just like, she was unbelievable. So and later on I decided, okay, now don't get mad at me for diagnosing somebody again. I am not a doctor, but I'm like, I hired a narcissistic lawyer. Wow. But she was just basically, why can't you find a job? And I'm just like, can we talk about like my divorce, please? And I was just like, And she was just so condescending. I went out, I was in tears later on that evening, actually. The woman made me cry. Because, it's bad enough when you can't find a job and you're looking for a job, it's very demoralizing. When you're all alone, when you've always lived with other people, people that loved you, when you have five little kids that adore you, and now some of them are hating on you, I was just down, downward spiral, down the rabbit hole. So I walked out of there, and I think I went into the office the next day to fire her, and later on, I forget how long it was, but she was not too happy when I gave her a bad review, and like, this the woman is unbelievable. And so what is so hilarious, listen to this, you guys. I gotta think of the story of how I found out. But so I started doing Airbnb. My Airbnb was getting very successful, especially around spring 2018. My Airbnb was getting so successful, during spring break. People would stop in Middle Georgia on their way to Disney. People, from up north, it's a perfect stopping point. And then I had travel nurses, people working on the base, because I lived near Warner Robins Air Force Base. And so my Airbnb was getting very successful. And so I don't remember exactly how I found it. I probably was on Airbnb looking at my competition. So guess what? This 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 condescending lawyer that's you know talking to me about why can't you find a job, you loser, basically is what she was sounding like. Guess what she did? She opened up an Airbnb in her home. True story, you guys. True story. I was floored. It was hilarious. And I'm like, what? Business not going too well? Because like she had all these bad reviews, and she would like try to counter them, and like she came after me because I gave her a bad review. She tried to have my review removed from one of the sites, Avo, I think it was, like saying she didn't really, like I didn't really hire her or some. She was trying to say something shady, and it was funny. So then also in 2017, what happened that was in 2015 though, I published this on Amazon Marketplace. I did this one in 2015, and that was exciting. And then I tried to do the What Elephant poem that's in this book as a children's book, and I hired Page Publishing. And then the same thing with them. They ended up being shady, and I didn't get proper royalties. And I paid them about $3,000. And then I bought the, let's see, I didn't have it handy. I didn't get it out, but my What Elephant book, you can see it. I wish it could be taken down. I spoke out about Page Publishing, and then they tried to sue me. And I have that video on I can link that video below. I'm going to link a few videos below that will relate to this because it's such a long and involved story. And And look, I'm at 15 minutes now. Can y'all hear me? So I was talking kind of softly. It was very hard to share about the date rape, and I never did even share about the date rape until a year later. So, and I shared about it on my blog. I have a blog. It's also called Redheaded Riding Hood. On all social media, I'm Redheaded Riding Hood, riding with a W and one T. So, yeah, you can take a look at that. There were a lot more posts. That's another thing with me is, especially before I left my Christianity for a time, I overshared. And so I'm trying, it's like I talked on a TikTok about the pendulum, and so I was over here and I went over here and I'm settling in the middle. So yeah, I kind of overshared. And if you ever listen to Brene Brown talk about vulnerability, I kind of had a vulnerability hangover. So it was really hard to share, and even harder to share that I got sent to a sex addicts class, because that was very hard to share. And that made it very difficult for me to face and confront the spiritual abuse at my church, because I had to say that is what she did. That's where she sent me. And then they're thinking, well, why did they send you there? Probably because you're a sex addict. And I wasn't. So that was very difficult stuff to share. And so that's why I took a little break after that video. And so, yeah, that was the two things that I didn't include that happened in 2015 and 2016 and 2017 was I hired the Shady lawyer. I believe I fired her in 2017. And in 2017 is when I hired Page Publishing. And in 2015, though, before I moved out of my ex's house, I published this. So, so what happened in 2018 when I was doing Airbnb, and I have lots of interesting Airbnb stories. And another video I will link below is my interview on Box Van D, where I talked a lot about this. It was a year later, a year after the date rape. I was celibate another year after the date rape. I didn't date again, and I was traumatized, even though it was not a violent rape, and it was basically, I just, let him finish. So, but it was very traumatic for me. And I didn't realize it. I was sort of in denial, and I was really blaming myself and really felt guilty about it, because I went to his house and stuff. And so, yeah, I really felt horrible about it. But I was being more open and talking about it more a year later. And I had a Syrian medical student, book my Airbnb. And the thing about that is he was able to come to America on his visa, which he got before the travel ban, because Syrians were under the travel ban. And that's where he was originally from, and he lived in Saudi Arabia. And he was 27 years old. So he booked my Airbnb for the month of August 2018. His name was Mohamad. Again, I'm not afraid. There have been times I've been afraid of these people, though. And honestly, I'm not fearless, especially when Page Publishing threatened to, well, they tried to sue me. It's still not been, I need to go look it up. It's still not been completely thrown out, but they tried to sue me for speaking out against Page Publishing on my website, on my blog, on social media. Because a lot of these things, I really had no recourse. I knew I couldn't get the money back from my lawyer. The only recourse I had was to give her a bad review. I had no recourse with the lawyer with Page Publishing. I didn't have the money to sue them. And so I spoke out against them on social media. When I was able to maybe sue them after I sold my house, I was not able to find a lawyer that would represent me. I'm very picky about choosing my lawyers now. And so thankfully, I did find a good lawyer for my divorce. I shopped around, and sometimes I even paid the $200 to speak to them and meet them. That was a big thing because like I hadn't even met her. And it was like a year into when I picked this lawyer, and I had not even met her. And so I was out that $2,500, and I shopped around, and I found another lawyer who I met. I was being called because it was filed at the courthouse. I was being called in for a like update or whatever into the courthouse, and I met a lawyer that I saw and that I liked, and I hired her, and she was very good. And it was later, it wasn't until the mediation actually happened that I realized she played soccer with my oldest child. So that was interesting. But I hired her, and in the course of looking for a lawyer, I went to a lawyer, a very experienced and good lawyer, and I wanted to hire a woman still. No offense to men, but I just wanted to hire a woman. And so I met this woman. She was very experienced, older woman, older than the one I actually hired. And she said, "This is so complicated." And she knew of my former lawyer. And she's like, yeah. And she said, yeah, that's not legal. What she said that she was having her husband practice law, which was illegal. But anyways, I did end up reporting her to the Bar Association, but they didn't do anything. But I did report her at per the advice from this lawyer I went to see. But this lawyer that I didn't pick, she said, "Yeah, this is very complicated because we were married so long, and there were a lot of things that I could get that she needed to try and get, and she felt like the previous lawyer had messed things up. And there was one thing, she had to change the paperwork. My new lawyer had to change the paperwork that I hired because it wasn't in the courthouse that I would get alimony. So she had to amend the paperwork with the courthouse. So that, but My new lawyer was 20, like 25. It ended up being about the same. The expensive lawyer though said, "This is so complicated that it's going to be $7,000." And I was like, "Thank you. Goodbye." And gave her $250 or whatever for initial consultation. So I did my homework and I was careful the second time around picking a lawyer. So yeah, I'm picky about my lawyers. So so all together with the first lawyer that I fired and the second lawyer, it added up to the same amount as the very expensive lawyer that I did not hire. So that's that story. And then I was talking about Mohamad. So I told the story about Mohamad on Box Fan D's interview with me, which I will link below. But that story is, he got me to fall for him. I didn't know that he was interested in getting a green card at all. He didn't mention that, of course. He just was very nice. A lot of times I felt like this is too good to be true. And then I don't really agree with that big of an age gap. So that was a thing. I didn't really agree. At this point, I was on my journey away from my faith. So, but still at that time, I was still in my faith. And so that he was Muslim and I was Christian, that was the biggest, hugest thing. That was the biggest, hugest thing, bigger than the age gap. Because I was like, oh well, he'll become a Christian when hell freezes over. Oh, I don't believe in hell anymore. But anyways, oh my goodness. See how complicated this story is? So, August 2017, I was date raped. Enter August 2018. And also, it just so happened that when Mohamad was staying at my house was the day I went for my divorce mediation. And my divorce finally got going. But that was a thing too, that he was there going to try to get me to marry him, but I wasn't divorced yet. The plot thickens. Okay, 28 minutes. I think this is going to have 3 parts, you guys. I think this is going to have 3 parts. So, yeah, we would watch movies every weekend. I mean, here he is in America. It's like, are you going to go see the sights or, go to Atlanta or whatever? And like, no, he'd go work at the hospital during the week. And on the weekends, he'd work on me. That's what I realize now. He would watch movies with me and we'd go out to eat, wine and dine me. And he wasn't at all like he was, because he was my oldest son's age. He was actually 1 year younger than my oldest son. And he met my oldest son too. That was interesting. Yeah, he met my oldest son. Teddy's taller than everybody, and Teddy stood up. And Mohamad was pretty tall too. But not as nobody's as tall as Teddy. People taller than 6'4" are taller than Teddy, but Teddy's 6'4". But yeah, he was 1 year young, like about a year younger than my oldest son. So he was way too young for me and wrong religion. But I went in. I realized there's a name for this phenomenon that I have experienced is called limerence. It's where you get in love and obsessed with someone who doesn't really feel the same as you, or you don't really. And And while it was his whole goal, though, is the thing, so I should forgive myself. He was purposely being perfect, and he was like, for anybody who doesn't know, and this is why I had a strong reaction to the slobby roommate, but he was really, really slobby. But I am pretty much a cleanie. It's kind of a mess over here. It's kind of bothering me. But my stuff is a mess because my stuff is just I'm being stored here temporarily too. Me and my stuff is here temporarily in my son's basement in Denver. And I'm hoping, say a prayer. I want to get Prosper Place, y'all. Say a prayer for my apartment. I really want it. Ian thinks it's too expensive, but I still want it. We'll see. We'll see. And that will kind of decide where I'll go from here. But anyways, I'm a cleanie. I'm a neat freak. And Mohamad was really neat and clean too. He was kind of a clean freak too. And I remember I ironed his doctor coats for him. He washed them, and yeah, he was a neat, he would make me coffee. I will make you coffee. He would grind the coffee with a hand grinder, and it was very strong coffee, though. Yeah, I like the flavored coffees, but anyways, he would make me coffee. We drink coffee together. And he was like, he even said it. I mean, because he was working on me. He was working on me the whole time. He was working on me. He was like, my friends say I'm like a 70-year-old man, because he was just like an old. He wasn't. He was like an old soul, I guess you'd say, because he wasn't. He was not at all like he was in his 20s. It was ridiculous. He was like he was in his 50s or something. But anyways, he didn't look his age either. He looked older. I mean, didn't look like he was in his 50s, of course, but he probably looked like he was in his, I would say he looked like he was in his 30s probably. Yeah, he didn't look or nor act his age. So that made it easier for me to go along with it. And when I finally woke up, even was after he went back to Saudi Arabia. Well, he said he went back to Saudi Arabia, and I don't think he did actually. I think he actually stayed in the States because it was like a major ordeal for him to come into the States. So I don't really think he had left. I think he said to me he had left. He lied to me, basically. And he was going to come back in October. I was finally divorced. I was still talking to him. I was finally divorced in September. In a way, in looking back, and I said this in the Box Fan D video interview, is it really was. I can even see God. I see God in a lot of things. I can even see God in that because, like I said to my son, the divorce was more difficult than I ever imagined. And if I knew anything how difficult it was going to be, I wouldn't have had the courage to do it, but I needed to do it anyways. And also, the actual, I kept on being like, I want this to be over with, I want to get divorced and blah, blah, blah. I want to be divorced. But when it actually came down to it, it's like that was 30 years of my life. I loved him. I love our 5 children. It was difficult. And that he was there, it was almost like a gift. That he was there and distracting me from how difficult that was. And even the day of, I was there, and it was like I had just met Mohamad. He had just came to my, so I didn't know what was going to transpire. It was like the 3rd of August, and he arrived on the 1st. And, but it was difficult, you know. This was 30 years of my life. And raising our kids and all of that. And I got the alimony, thankfully, thanks to my new lawyer. And I went back home to my Airbnb, to spending time with this, I thought, lovely, honest young man who was becoming a doctor. Then come to find out, so it was November when I said something in a message to him, and he sort of turned on a dime and said, because I said something, I could never marry someone who had more than one wife. Because one of the things he said, because one of the things I thought about is like, well, he wants to have children, you know. I can't marry him because I can't have any more kids, because I've had 5 kids. I was in my 50, I was 51 at that time. How old was I? Oh, yeah, I was 50. I was about to turn 51. No, I was 51, about to turn 52. 2018. So, but his solution to that was to get another wife that could. And I never really was going to marry him because I just thought, I mean, I was even like messaging my sister-in-law, who was a good friend, my brother. I will go into that when I get into 2020 and 2021. But my brother's wife, I was messaging her, and I was like, this can't be a long-term relationship. So, but that was my first relationship where I chose to give up being celibate for I used to be like, I'm Sandra D. Look at me, I'm Sandra D. When I first saw that movie Grease with my sister, I think, and I was very young, and I was like the Sandra D character, and my sister's like the Rizzo character. Hey.
Hello.
Okay, I'm gonna end this. My son's home from work. Do you want to say hi?
Hello. How's it going?
I don't know if I'm gonna post this yet, but we'll see.